I'm going to start with a really easy question for the panelists. You all come from very different sectors. Obviously, we've got homewares, fashion, and consulting. When you see a presentation like that, what is the filter in your mind doing? How do you edit that down for what you do as a career? I'm going to start with Jacqeline from Sheridan. Sorry.
And everyone can hear, obviously, it's a small crowd. For me, obviously, I'm at Sheridan, so it's interiors products. So when I look at a presentation like that, obviously the fabrication is really important. And also, I think just if you pull back and look at the macro trends of what the presentation is telling you. So the big thing that I got from that presentation is the creative tension and almost that anything goes, either or, that they kept talking about. So skirt lengths are at different lengths. You've got that very feminine maxi pipe look, and then you've got the minimalism and that really masculine hard back look. So I think the creative tension is what's really, really important now, and that's something when we're obviously looking at interiors and how people are designing and working within their homes. It really is, I think, about the mix. So, for example, like a really obvious thing would be the knits. That really stood out to me in that presentation. They were really chunky and oversized and that beautiful overscaled texture. So we'd look at doing that in an accessory, but then mixing it with something that you wouldn't usually mix it with. So perhaps mixing it with a really raw, slubby linen, and then maybe putting like a silk accessory with it. So actually getting that beautiful creative tension and the different fabrications for me is what I'm focused on, obviously, because we're not working with the shape.
Do you, when you're sourcing international trends as a reference point, do you look exclusively at interiors, or are you informed by what's going on in catwalks?
Yeah, catwalks and fashion. So when we go overseas, we do fairs. We definitely do all the fashion stores because they talk to each other. And at the moment, I mean, one example would be the innovation in print and these amazing digital prints that are coming out. So I know Alexander McQueen did them last season, those beautiful beetle prints that he did and those beautiful scale prints. That wasn't possible a few years ago. So that's now not only happening in fashion, it's happening in interiors. And we have some product in store that we did last season that was putting that digital print onto bed linen. And for us, luckily enough, because it is what we're renowned for, decoration is back. So we have moved our print into a really innovative space where we're actually doing some really amazing textures with prints and literally using the bed as a canvas. So when we look at some of the amazing prints up there, we're using that, and people are decorating like that. So they might have a really sparse, minimal room, and then they might actually use the fabric and the textile on their bed as a piece of art. And it sort of tells a snapshot of the time. So when we travel, we definitely look at all fashion. Look at everything. Yeah, look at everything. And I think when you travel as well, you're looking at the people on the streets. It's how, it's that osmosis. I think for me, there's nothing more inspirational than travel and just watching people and looking at how people actually live. Like I think that head to toe look is gone, and likewise in interiors, it's gone. So
it's more about clashing.
The clash and our fascination with street style. So blogs like the Sartorialists and things like that, I think, are really important. And now you've got the interiors blogs like the Selby that are also really speaking to that as well, and that beautiful creative tension of it's an ongoing story and people are styling themselves and their interiors. Yeah.
Claudia, is it more difficult for you to look at that and edit it in your own mind as a consultant? Because you obviously freelance for Harper's Bazaar, which does a lot of the gorgeous sort of high-end designer fashion, but then you also consult for something like Portman's, which is a high street retail chain.
Yeah, I know, but the process is exactly the same. Obviously, I've got a magazine head first. You know, I've been doing it for 20 years, and it's all about editing. I've been first editing fashion for 20 years. So that's how my mind works. First, I'm taking all the trends, everything as a whole. And then my brain starts to tick, okay? And so from that, I'm starting to extract what the trends are, because my job starts even before, before I go to the fashion show. So it's not looking at something like that. It's starting from before, from me looking at things before I see something edited like that. So, I take everything as an whole, and then I start to look at the most important designer first, and the trends are starting to come out, and maybe it's in my DNA by now, it's very clear to me, you know, what are the big trends, and also I've got so many references in my head as well, because fashion obviously is inspired by life, by art, by movies, by everything. So maybe you know, a collection remind me of a very famous actress in the 60s or something else. Remind me of something that Yves Saint Laurent has done in the 70s, you know, and like that. So when I know the trends, okay, then I decide, obviously, when I was working for the magazine, you have to tell your reader every trend. When I'm thinking about my clients, I have to extract from those trends what is important for my clients, what is the DNA of my client, what is their look, what is their feeling, and which trends, which details is going to work for them. So it's a lot, it's like being a detective. You know?
I know you did a bit of work for Portman's. You kind of brought in the strong shoulder jacket into the stores, and you styled this really, really fashion-forward kind of campaign for them. What are some of the other brands that you work with? Can you reveal that? I'm being a sneaky journalist here.
I can't tell you all of them.
But can you tell me some?
Well, one of Jigsaw as well.
Jigsaw as
Yes,
well?
yeah.
Wow. See, because they're positioned at very different ends of the market,
Yeah, but
aren't
that's
they?
why I can do it, because I have to be very careful also that each one of my clients has to be very different, because I don't want any conflict of interest. And also, when I think about each one of them, I can't think the same thing, you know, and that's why they need to be different. So I can really find the different point of view for each one of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, each presentation, what I say is completely different.
So from what we just saw today, what would you put into Portman's and what would you put into Jigsaw?
Oh, this is a very sneaky question. Okay, well, obviously, I tell you the difference. Portman's is real high street. So obviously the turnover is so much faster, and they are very kind of latest trends. So, you know, when the Balmain shoulder came out, yes, we got to do that, you've got to jump on that, you know. So it's very much more trendy, let's say, and much faster. Jigsaw is a very different brand. It's got probably much stronger DNA of their own. It doesn't really follow fashion so much. There is a fashion injection in what they're doing, but it's more original to themselves. So it's almost more, I would call it a bit more on the designer side than just pure high street. I don't think it's pure high street. And so what is good for them is much more particular, I think. Because, you know, for Portman's, each one of those trends will apply.
Yeah.
For them, no. You know, some of the things, I'm not going to tell you what, but you know, it's a much more precise the work for them, because the you know, the look and the feeling is much more, let's say, designer, and they've got a very, very strong look, which obviously needs to be respected. So you can't tell them all of a sudden to do something that doesn't apply to them. It's silly, you know? But of course, they need to be on the fashion, but in their own way.
In their own way.
Yeah.